So far we've gone through foundation posture, we've gone through leg positions, and we've gone through arm lines. So tonight we're going to talk about the plié, the arabesque, and the fondu. So starting with the plié, this is probably the first move you're ever going to encounter in any bar class, the plié. And we're going to start with the first position plié. So we set up in our foundation posture, and I'm just going to bring my hands to my hips because that helps me be more aware of my tailbone tuck and my ab brace. So you'll often find you will start the class with the hands on the hips. And you'd start with a Demi Plie. Now remember last night I advised that Demi just means half. Therefore a Demi Plie is just half a plie. And a plie is kind of a bit like a squat, but with one very important difference. We'll get to the important difference in just a moment. But for your basic first position plie, all you would do is press knees out over toes, which are still turned out, like so. And then you would squeeze the thighs back together to lift back up. You keep that tailbone tucked under, chest lifted, and squeeze thighs to lift. So that's your Demi Plie in first position. To increase it to a full plie, you would simply release the heels on the way down. So as I plie down, I lift my heels, rolling up onto the balls of the feet, knees press out over toes, and then I squeeze the thighs to return back to first position. So we come down, and we squeeze. And the knees would bend no further than 90 degrees as you come down into your first position plie. Now I mentioned the one important difference between a plie and a squat, and I'm going to turn sideways to show you that. Because we all know how to do a squat, which we wouldn't normally do with the feet together, but we all know that when we normally do a squat, we keep the chest lifted, but we stick the bum out as we squat down. Not in bar, not with a plie. We keep that tailbone tucked under, so we keep our ballet tuck in place, we keep the chest lifted and those shoulders down and back, and that's the position we maintain with the upper body. So as we plie down, the upper body stays in that position, and then we squeeze the thighs to return back up. So we lower down, nice straight back, tailbone under, and we lift. The second position plie is essentially the same, just with the feet wider. So we maintain our turnout on our feet, we maintain our ballet tuck, our lifted chest, and again I'm just going to keep my hands on my hips for now. And again exactly the same move, knees out over toes, but you would generally keep the heels grounded in a second position plie. So you'd come down, and then again you'd squeeze the inner thigh muscles, but also this time you're now working your glute med as well as you lift. In a second position plie, the bum would come no lower than the knee joint. And again, if I turn sideways, remember it's a plie, not a squat, so those shoulders stay down and back, chest stays up, tailbone stays under. We lower down, and we lift. I like to describe it as imagining you've got your back pressed against a wall as you come down in your plie, and the whole of your back has to stay in contact with that wall. So you can't tip forward because those shoulders as well as that tailbone need to be in contact all of the way down. You would generally add an arm line to your plie. So maybe in first position you might come to first or fifth. In second position you would quite often bring the arms to second and then maybe fifth. And you might find that you actually pulse your plie and add what's known as a port-à-bras. So a continuous movement. Remember we said a port-à-bras is the carriage of the arms. So a second position plie with port-à-bras may perhaps be second, fifth, second, bras. The other time you will encounter the plie in the bar class is with weights. So in our strength and our power track, where we use the weights, second position, generally nothing changes other than you're adding some sort of arm movement to your plie. So for example, you might come to a second position plie, lifting the plates up to shoulder height and returning. Or again, you might encounter the port-à-bras. So you might pulse down and port-à-bras the arms with the pulse. Or you might even find you pulse down even longer and you hold your pulse and just have little microcircles in those arms, just working the shoulder muscles really hard. Same idea with the first position plie, but there is one important difference with the first position pliés in the weighted tracks, which is generally it is the only time in bar that you are allowed to stick your bum out, so make the most of it. So when I'm doing a first position plie with my plates, I still keep my chest lifted and my shoulders down and back, but then I may press the plates back as I plie down, and as you see I am actually sticking my bum out in this move, unlike the first position plie without the plates. Obviously not everyone is lucky enough to have plates at home, but there's plenty of household items that you can use instead. A couple of tins of beans or something, or maybe a couple of bottles. Top tip from Diana herself, the programme director. Use a screw top, make sure you drink from each bottle evenly so they stay the same weight as you do your weighted tracks. Okay, back to the serious stuff. So there are your basic pliés, first and second position, and some of the variations you may encounter on your plié. So now we're going to move on to the arabesque. So with our arabesque line, I'm actually going to turn sideways so you can see this better, and we're going to start in third position with the feet. So you remember I told you third position, you put the heel of one foot into the arch of the other foot. So in this case I've got the heel of my back foot into the arch of my front foot. My tailbone is tucked, my shoulders are down and back. Now the most important thing to remember in an arabesque is you need to imagine you have a pane of glass either side of you. And so your range of movement has to stay within those two imaginary planes of glass that you've got either side of you. Now I'm going to bring my hands to my hips again just so I can feel that tailbone tuck, be aware of my ab brace. So I would set up my foundation posture, and then whichever foot is behind in the third position with the feet is the one that slides back. So you slide it back, remembering to keep it inside that plane of glass and remembering to keep the turnout on the foot. Now you tip forward very, very slightly as the leg goes back, and you can hold the toe on the floor, or you can lift the foot off the floor. Quite often in bar you will find you will add a tap to your arabesque. So you would maybe start with just a toe tap, and then maybe you'd add one of those arm lines I showed you last night. So maybe our first arabesque, or maybe our third arabesque. But all the time ensuring you're working within those two planes of glass. So you're working the glutes, you're working the glute med. And this back leg, imagine someone stole your knee joint. So as you lift and tap the toe, there's no bend in that knee. The leg stays perfectly straight. Turnout remains. And that way you're working your butt muscles, your glutes, you're giving them a really good workout. Whereas if you're bending the knee, all you're doing is working your hamstrings. So that's your arabesque line. You will find there's other variations on the arabesque, which I will show you later in the week, where maybe you'd add a jump to your arabesque. But we'll worry about jumps later on in the week. Now I'm going to stay in the arabesque for the final thing I want to talk about tonight, because I mentioned the word fondu. Now if you're anything like me, as soon as you hear the word fondu, your brain will go, melted chocolate. And that essentially is part of the key of a fondue, to melt. Only you're not melting chocolate, unfortunately. What you're melting is your knee joint. So you'd set up your arabesque line. Remember, you've got your turnout, you've got a very slight tip forward, although that chest is still up and those shoulders are still down and back. And to add the fondu, you would bend the knee on the standing leg, and it bends out over the toe, like so. So this is my fondued arabesque, which again I can add an arm line to. So there we go, the plié, the arabesque and the fondu. See you tomorrow night.